to seminar number 4. In particular, I want to make mention of the Qingdao faculty delegation who is in the second row down there. So welcome to our research seminar here. This is the 4th in the series of Holmes research seminars. Who else is here? We want to welcome the MBA graduate students, particularly those in HI 6008, the Capstone project, and I can see a number of those here. They're all supposed to be here today. And we also have some of our graduate students from HI 6006, competitive strategy. So that's the second group of students there. And we also have some Holmes faculty. I can see 2 Holmes faculty members here. They're the good guys. The bad guys are the ones who are not here. So welcome to all of those people. The seminar today will be led by faculty member Jeff Stewart, who will lead us off. And then the graduate students who nominated to give their seminars today, Saida Banu, Husna Naz, and Hasnain Nazir Chowdhury. These are the 3 faculty members three capstone students who said they would give their seminars today. So that's the agenda for today. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Jeff, whose seminar is on management theory, up from the slime.
Okay, so management theory got a lot to do with slime. No, there, yes. Actually, it was the primordial soup. In the beginning, there was a volcanic eruption and some of the sulfur dioxide formed into amino acids, and we think these were our ancestors. But let me back up. I'd like to echo Peter's thanks. The other thing is to say that Peter is leading the charge in the community of scholars inside the Holmes Institute. There will be more of these sorts of seminars. Anyone doing the research capstone subject 6008 will get to present at one of these seminars. The idea is that you bring your research. You can even come at the beginning of your research. Here's the thing I'd like to do, and get feedback and discussion from the group and refine your idea of what research you would like to do. So in this paper, I'm going to identify half a dozen topics. All right, one of the hardest things seems to be for people to find a research topic. We think it's easy, so I'm going to try and connect those dots today. I'll end up talking about Porter and Christensen. Michael Porter had a few ideas 40 years ago. We're still talking about them in class. They were good ideas, but the world is more complicated now and there are other ideas, and there are challenges to Porter's theory. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Christensen has been the guru on disruption for 17 years. His research has been analysed in detail, and some of it has been found to overlook little facts, such as he talks about a new innovative company in the hard disk industry that actually was a company who'd already been in the industry for some time and changed their name. And he's drawing conclusions about innovation and new companies when it's actually a company that's around for some time that just changed its name, which diminishes the value of his research, I think. However, let me start. This is what I was trying to do. Well, I was thinking it was primordial slime, but when I look in the literature, it's primordial soup. So we had this volcanic eruption and a bit of sulfur dioxide. We made a couple of amino acids. What happened from there on, our ancestors, well, these are our ancestors. These amino acids eventually became us. It took about 4 billion years, I think. And what happened is some amino acids are better at replicating themselves, making copies of themselves, and therefore end up being the winners. And so it is in business. If you grow, you end up dominating the industry. So I took this idea from the primordial slime of 4 billion years ago and thought, where does this apply in business? And I looked at the motorcycle industry after the Second World War. Now, before the Second World War, England was very, very strong in the motorcycle business across the world. And after the war, they were growing at 10% and thought they were doing very well and were proud of themselves and making They thought lots of bikes. The Japanese industry was growing at 90% a year. Have a guess who ended up dominating the world motorbike industry. So this notion of speed of growth leading to dominant position in an industry is what I got from looking at the primordial slime. And so I've got a couple of references in here to start off a discussion. So in this paper I say here's a suggested topic and here's a couple of references that might get you going on that topic. All right, now if we want to, where am I here? All right, so sometime after the primordial slime, about 3.5 billion years after the primordial slime, there were dinosaurs. Now, this is chasing somebody in a boat. Now, I don't think there were people in a boat around when the dinosaurs, so it's a little bit of artistic license here. I'm really just mentioning dinosaurs. They dominated the Earth for 120 million years. The dinosaurs, we think of them as dumb big brutes. They dominated the Earth for 120 million years. We've been around for maybe 2, depends when you think we became human, 1 or 2 billion years. So they're a long way ahead of us in terms of the period on which they dominated the Earth. So what do we learn from dinosaurs? The research topic I got from that is, why did they last so long? Right? Why is it that dinosaurs lasted for 120 million years? One of the possible answers is there were lots of different sorts of dinosaurs. They occupied lots of different ecological niches. So you could start some research thinking about why did they last so long. You could think about research on niches in the business world, in the business ecology, where companies can occupy and flourish. So I've got a couple of references to start off that discussion if someone was interested in that sort of topic. Then we had a bit of global cooling. You might remember, I think there's a volcano in Iceland that's about to blow. I think it's the same one that blew a couple of years before the French Revolution. Here's a rethinking of history for you. This volcano blew, there were a couple of bad summers, the peasants were hungry, and we had the French Revolution. So it was because of a volcano. It wasn't the taxes or the aristocracy. There's a different view of history. Anyway, the lights went out, the dinosaurs didn't have thermostats, they all died, and we were left with little furry creatures. Not this one exactly, but little furry creatures. And they're our ancestors. Eventually the mammals grew from these little furry beasties that survived this is us. So the little furry creatures became these guys and then became us. It's the cycle of life. Now, I made a connection here between towards team play. All right. Furry creatures, our ancestors, the people who swing in the trees, and us, we prosper in a gang culture. Team culture, if you like nice words, gang culture, if you like more frank words. So we hunt in packs. Our species hunts in packs, just like dogs, dingoes, wolves, whatever, camels. And so this was just a cartoon that I thought was amusing with Bill Clinton and some of his friends. They're not really his team, but could have been. So the suggested topic that occurred to me behind that, which is too broad, you need to refine. Research tends to, as it gets more sophisticated, gets more narrow. So you ask much more specific questions. Some of these questions I'm asking are too broad, so you would want to find inside there a specific little something that you wanted to dig into. But the idea I had was about teams at work. If you work for any corporation in the world, you'll hear lots of stuff about teams and team players, and you will find that the organizational structure, you used to think it was a static structure with a manager for this and a manager for that and da-da. Very often these days you have project teams. So there's a project team bringing in the new IT system. There's a project team working out how to do business in China. There's another project team working out what is the next technology. So with Apple, for example, the iPhone 6, they started work on the iPhone 6 at least 6 months before. The team was in place and working 6 months before the release of the iPhone 5. So it takes 18 months, 2 years to develop a new phone. You want a new one out every year. The next guys have to start before this one gets released. And we're about to see, I think September 9 is the date for the release of the next iPhone, which will be the fruit of that process. Now, that's team. We play in teams and gangs. It's very true in business. It's true in life. I put it to you, well, in the West, we've got this nuclear family idea where one male and one female, well, two people. I can't say male and female anymore. That's now obsolete. Marriage is anybody who gets together. But two people against the world is a very small team. And it used to be that marriage was a link between this family and that. So it was a team of 100, not a team of 2. One of the reasons for the great deal of stress in the nuclear family is it's a very small team. And well, my thought is that people who are happy very often have found a village to live in. 100 people that they know, who they relate to, who give some meaning to who they are. Now that can be your colleagues at work, it can be people at the tennis club, whatever. So teams at work is at the heart of how organisations function, and there's lots, hundreds of different research topics you might find inside this how do teams function at work. Now I jump forward again here to the Roman Empire. So dinosaurs, I'm sort of jumping big jumps through the theory of management here. The Roman Empire lasted 500 years. It's a long time. And these guys had a procedure manual on how to fight a war, on how to run a province. It wasn't just, put them to the sword and extract some taxes. And so the part of that procedural manual I'm illustrating here is the military strategy. So this was at the beginning, this is what the Romans did. They'd have the main infantry here, reserves behind, cavalry, horseback stuff at the side, some extras here, and the enemy. So there was a procedure manual on how to fight a battle, and the Romans were quite good at it. Do I have to hit this twice every time? One formation is a pig's head. So if you're fighting a line of people, you want to push in amongst them and then kill the guys on either side. So that's why the Romans had these short stabbing swords rather than a big flailing sword, because they were accustomed to close combat, and the short stabbing sword is much better to pop out from behind you and stab the guy who's nearest. So that's a pig's head. This. Square formation, when you were losing, you put the general in the middle, formed a square and tried to battle your way out of it. So there's instructions on what to do when things are going badly. Back one. This, when you're in a siege, a lot of, cities had walls around them and they would just lock the door and wait for you to go away. So the trick is to make sure they didn't get any water or food, and eventually you win, because meanwhile they're firing arrows from the ramparts down upon you. This was the Roman strategy to resist the arrows, just put the shields on top. So this is all written in the procedure manual. Roman generals were trained in how to do this. Corporations need to understand how to fight the battles that are the business and train their people to do it. The Romans were doing it 2,000 years ago. So this is a recreation. These are recent dudes just pretending to be Romans. It's not, they don't look threatening. Real Romans, you'd be frightened of them. These guys, I don't think so. They're guys without a life who want to dress up as Romans. Okay, now let me go back one. In this, this is just a page of instructions that are part of the procedure manual from Roman times by Vegetius. A whole set of instructions on how you fight a battle. All right, so that's the Romans. When was Sun Tzu? He was about the same time as the Romans?
300 BC.
All right, before the Romans. I'm going backwards. I've gone back 300 years here. Sun Tzu, Ancient Art of War. This is the manual out of China from 2,500 years ago in how to fight a battle or how to run a community as well. The particular bit of this that I picked up on Sun Tzu says there's 9 types of ground. There's lots of modern managers have studied this ancient war manual and tried to understand how it might apply to their business. There's 9 sorts of ground. So if it's on marshy ground, you do a different thing than if you're going uphill or if you come to intersecting highways. The thing about intersecting highways is there's this group, that group, and the other group, right? Where the highways intersect, there's multiple communities around, and what you should be doing is forming an alliance with this one and perhaps that one, and you will nail the third guy. So the notion of partnership and alliance is playing very strongly in business these days. I talk in class about Asian thinking versus Western thinking. We think that people brought up in a nice Asian culture know how to cooperate, collaborate, work in harmony together, where Western devils just want to kill everybody and get the answer now. So George Bush illustrates Western thinking. Rumsfeld says, hey, we can knock over the Iraqis in 3 weeks. George says, hey, go and do it. Away they went, and they had control of Iraq in 3 weeks. But they hadn't thought about what happens next. So 10 years later, they're still there, not knowing what an exit strategy might be. Where Asian thinking, Toyota, for example, if there's a new model of car being developed, they talk about to the manufacturing people, to the marketing people, to the maintenance people, and to the people who built the components for other cars to see what you can reuse in this car. So everybody is consulted, everybody knows what the problem is, everybody knows what the choices are, and when you choose to make the car, it's a snap. It's very easy because everybody has been briefed. That's the opposite of George Bush invading Iraq. So the Western thing is to go nail something now and try and work out what it all means later. We think the Asian approach is to do consultation and understand the problem and get everybody briefed, and so implementation is easy. So partnership is very important in business right now, and we think perhaps people from the East know how to do it better than Western managers. So, suggested topic, factors determining the success of alliances is what I picked out of that. This partnership and alliance stuff can be very, very important. IBM and Apple have just formed a partnership where IBM will bring business software and put it on the iPad. So IBM have been big in business computing for 40 years, 50 years. Apple doing pretty well in the iPod business. When they get together, that's a partnership that we think will work very well. So I've got a couple of references to get you started on that. Then I'm jumping forward to Schumpeter and creative destruction. Now, Porter talked about sustainable competitive advantage. And we thought we understood what that was in the 1980s, and Kodak were good at it, and General Motors were good at it. They've both now gone completely broke. So it was a good idea for the time. What was different about that time is this year is pretty similar to last year and next year, and nothing changes much. So if you get ahead, you can stay ahead. And strategy cycle times are long, product cycle times are relatively long. What's happening in the current world is the strategy life cycles have shrunk right down, product life cycles shrunk right down. It used to be, it took you 5 years to design a car and you could have it on the market for 10 years. Now you need to be able to design a car and get it to market in 18 months, and all of your competitors can have something similar on the market 12 months later. So there's a shortening of strategy life cycle and product life cycle. That means the sustainable competitive advantage idea doesn't work so well. It only worked well in a slow changing world. Now we have a rapidly changing world. We need to be good at identifying what is the current opportunity and riding that opportunity for a year or two, and finding what is the next opportunity and going riding that opportunity for the next year or two. So that's the progression in thinking around strategy. All right. So Schumpeter is one of the readings there. Now, I was just talking about sustainable competitive advantage. Now, Rita Rita Gunter McGrath, just put out a paper in the last few weeks suggesting that Porter's sustainable competitive advantage was out of date and old-fashioned. I went into the literature and had a little look around, and I found a scholarly article from 1998 by an academic by the name of Fine, F-I-N-E, exploring the idea that all advantage is temporary. That's the current world. That is the world in which you guys are going to be managing, where all advantage is temporary, because the technology is changing, the customer's taste is changing, the level of competition from overseas is changing. So you need to pay attention, because whatever advantage you've got today may not be there tomorrow. So that's competitive advantage. I've got a few references there. So bringing this back to where we started, what I was hoping to do is just put on the table some ideas. I know some of you think finding a research topic seems to be a weird and mysterious and difficult task. I've sprayed a few ideas around here, hoping that this might help you find something you're interested in and something you want to develop and do some research, and please Peter in HI 6008. What normally happens, there's a community of scholars in every university that does this sort of thing. So there's a spray from someone who's doing some research, and then a discussion on how to make the research better. Now, I don't know, Peter, do you want to lead the discussion here? So this is supposed to be a question and answer session with you guys about any of the ideas we put on the table or anything else you would like to talk about.
You can handle some questions at the end. You're very close to the end now.
I am at the end.
Oh, there's a few more slides.
Oh, all right. Sorry. There you are. This is Kodak falling apart. I mentioned it in passing. So Kodak dominated the film industry for tens of years. General Motors dominated the motor vehicle industry for tens of years. What happened is they kept doing the same thing when the competition came from a different direction, and they went out of business, completely busted. So last century was the American century. This century, we think the Chinese century, we think.
What happened to the Japanese century?
Well, we thought in the 1980s, you guys, some of you would know, we thought that Japan was the most successful business country we had ever seen. They'd become very important in the car industry. YKK made 90-something% of the zippers in the world. They were in the computer industry, in the camera industry, being immensely successful. And suddenly, what happened in the 80s, Japan has gone flat for 20 years. So part of that was the Americans fixed the currency, the exchange rate, which made it harder for Japan to export stuff. Yeah.
So just my question, is it to do with their wage growth and their lack of competitiveness?
Yes. So you go back to the 60s, Japanese wages were way down. So they could make competitively priced products. Their exchange rate was favorable. The Americans, I went to a conference in America around about 85, and the Americans were feeling seriously threatened that this economy, they knew how to do business and make stuff better than the Americans. Now, I don't know how many Americans you know, but if you threaten their position, they get a bit excited and work a lot harder. And they did.
Or they bomb you.
Well, in some cases. Sometimes they actually make better stuff. So this is supposed to be question time.
Click on to the next.
Another slide? Is there another one? That one.
Click again.
Oh, there we are. Right. Yes.
Your comment about everything changing, actually there's a Murphy's Law that falls into that called Peirce Law. And Peirce Law is the solution to the problem changes the problem.
Yes, all right. Now you might like to ponder this at night, at home. The solution to the problem changes the problem. When you use technology to address problems you've got, the context changes, and so you end up with a different set of problems. So as you progress as a business, each time you make changes to accommodate to what is happening, the definition of the problem changes, because you fix that one and there's always problems in business. We're looking for questions here. Would you like to do some research on teams at work? Okay. Yeah?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
In the emerging countries like Japan and probably now China, they, from my experience, the culture is very much like very tall structures for managers and the workers.
Yes.
And going in sort of any country that's emerging in that industrial sphere, they tend to have that structure. And then as you move more towards a flatter sort of country and society
And business.
competitive business, sort of that competitiveness is well.
Okay.
Do you think that will happen in China
Ha!
over time?
He's asked me to predict the future of China. It's not so easy, I think.
I guess relating it to Japan.
Yeah, we can talk about Japan instead. Let me just talk about that for a minute. When traditional business was patterned on the military, so there's a big, tall hierarchy with officers and generals and command and control structure, and that works well if you know what the problem is and the problem stays the same and you can make it efficient. When the problem is changing quickly, as John suggests, you need an organisation that's able to detect what is happening and adapt to the new game. So you need much more freedom of thinking. If you bring your young people up in a structure where you're saying, here is the book, here is the culture, learn this stuff, recite this stuff, that's all you ever need to know, it's difficult then for your young people to indulge in innovation and think of new ideas and think of better ideas. One of the good things in the West is this freedom for people to find their own solution, choose their own adventure, live their own life, have new and fresh ideas. The bad news about that is our teenagers are uncontrollable and very annoying, but that's a price we pay. Did I address?
Comment on, not exactly a question of one of many.
Ah,
So when you talk about China,
Speak up.
Japan, we are talking more about the power distance, and that's what it separates out from the very top management people until
Yes.
people are like at a lower level.
yes.
See, my observation, I was attending a seminar at the International Finance Center in Hong Kong last year. We were surprised. We were there for the whole day entire session. Suddenly, at lunchtime, we wanted to use the washrooms. As we were walking the corridor, one sign said, the washrooms for women executives only. And that, I found it just a good example how the power distance is and how they still maintain it. This sort of goes in line what you're talking as well. Not giving enough opportunities for the young ones or the people who want to enter the workforce.
Yeah.
And also I'd like to make a mention what you said earlier.
Well, let me deal with that one first, and then we'll give you another go.
Okay.
Power distance come from Hofstede, some research done in the 60s about what is different about different cultures in the world. One of the dimensions of this research was power distance. How far away is the manager from the worker? Can the worker talk to the manager? Do you use first name terms or doff your hat and call them Mr. Smith? That's power distance. We think lots of cultures have very strong power distance, which means that it's very hard for ideas to travel from the lower level people up the hierarchy. In a modern corporation, the people who see the problems with the customers and the fact that the product is out of date are the people who are talking to the customers, who are at the front line of the organisation. If you have a very tall organisation, those ideas don't travel to the top. You know how communication works. The sales guy says, hey, we're in deep trouble here, the competition got a better product at a lower price. By the time this gets to the managing director through 10 layers of communication, the message is everything is cool, we're doing a great job, give us all a bonus. And so the real message gets lost on the way up the translation because every manager is trying to pretend they're doing their job very well. So we think in Western cultures it's more open. The power distance is less. My 20-year-old son certainly thinks he's allowed to tell me what to do, which is I find very annoying, but that's Western culture. Did we deal with that one? And your next? One sec, I've got another question here.
Alright, just talking about the theory of Hofstede again, what you mentioned about the Chinese culture, I wanted to make a mention about the collectivism as well.
Yes. Okay, Hofstede again, on this research of how do you define cultures, one of the dimensions is collectivism versus individualism. Northern Europeans, Vikings, my ancestors, if there's a problem, we want to take out the sword and attack. Yeah, and that's the individualists. One person at a time looking after their destiny the best way they know how. We think that Asian cultures are more accustomed to defining their identity as a member of a family, as a member of a community, to working together in harmony. In a world where partnerships are a very, very important part of the success of corporations, we think this capacity to collaborate and cooperate will be enormously valuable. Let me give you one example of that. Toyota come to Melbourne and they built a plant here about 20 years ago. And Denso, who make the air conditioning for Toyota in Japan, they came too and set up a factory right next door, and this collaboration between Denso and Toyota happens in every country where they go. So the relationship with the suppliers is one of partnership and collaboration. General Motors, on the other hand, would let a tender saying, hey, we want this part made. They'd get the bids, they'd choose the lowest one, they'd squeeze that guy on price till they went out of business, and then they'd let the tender again and get another guy and squeeze that one till they went out of business. What is happening in the car industry now is there's only big suppliers left because the car companies crushed all the little guys. And so a company like Bosch out of Germany, who make electrical parts for cars, make twice the profit of General Motors because they have control. General Motors no longer knows how to design the electrical bits for cars. They just buy them from Bosch. There's nowhere else to buy them. Bosch gets the price. Bosch makes a bigger profit than the car companies.
One of the things that I've seen over my few decades on this planet is what creates the competitive advantage often has the seeds of destruction within it. So within Japan, they lost World War II. There was great shame.
It's only by a bit.
The advantage there was the people were ready for change. They
Okay.
embraced new methods of manufacture. The success then reduced that ability to embrace change.
Okay, let me speak to that. Who has some Japanese? Ganbate. Is that a word you know in Japanese? Ganbate? Contemporary young people translate it as go for it, as if it's the Nike ad. After the Second World War, the problem in Japan was to find enough food to feed the population so you could last one more day. And ganbate was the word they used to encourage one another to stay at it. We'll be all right. We just need to stick together and make it happen here. So you get a level of cooperation, collaboration and harmony to address the problem of getting enough food, which then feeds into the corporation culture. Some people think that car companies across the world have been trying to imitate Toyota for 30 years. They don't seem to be able to do it. And partly it's this culture of searching for excellence, collaborating with one another to make the very finest product that Japanese have a commitment to, and Westerners want to go drinking and dancing instead. Where did I get to? Am I anywhere there? Are there any more questions? I think we're just about out of time here.
I just wanted to, I put up that word there because it's an important one in talking about some of the things that Jeff was talking about earlier on. We sort of know what ambidexterity means. How many of you are right-handers? Yeah? How many left-handers? There are a few. But there are some people who are good at both. And they're pretty good sportsmen normally. They're ambidextrous. And you would say, well, what's that got to do with business? There's a whole stream of business research in ambidexterity. What they're saying is, an organisation like IBM with 380,000 employees, just think about that for a while. 380,000 employees, that's a bureaucracy. You need a bureaucracy to manage a business of that size. And some people say, could we teach this elephant how to dance? Could this elephant be nimble? It's a bureaucracy. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is, yeah, we've got to be innovative as well. And that's the real challenge. Can you be ambidextrous? And the word ambidextrous has gone into the management literature. There's a recent review, about 50 papers for a conference on ambidexterity, just on that. How you do that. Can an organisation like Holmes Institute manage its affairs on the one hand, manage its affairs on the one hand, and then do the new stuff? Well, you've got to be ambidextrous. It's not so easy, and that's the challenge. Because big organisations tend to be a bit right-handed, if you like. They're good at managing their existing business, but they're not so good at developing new business. And what happens there is we rely on people in garages, people like Bill Gates in a garage, or Steve Jobs in a garage. The nimble, small organisations. Hey, the big organisations need to be innovative as well. They need to be ambidextrous. Okay, well, let's leave it there. I think it's time for everybody to have a cup of coffee or something. And then the seminar will be handed over to the students' names that I put up before. So,
All right.
thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Well done. Thank you. Well done. You feeling